Uh, so at the end of the day, so funny enough, we didn't know we've been live since. So I'll go back to the earlier conversations. And so I said we have several generations the workplace. So for this is meant to be like we've done the first 15 minutes, but I'll do a rundown. So I said, why do we have generational conversation in the workplace? Has been like the oldest conversation we've always had. But I'll take us back to memory lane. And I want us to talk about to look at the kind of generations we had, what the world was like prior to now. In the beginning, we have a generation we call the lost generation. The lost generation were from 1883 to 1900. Now, whenever you talk about generations, you come to see that it has more to do with who were those born in this era, what were the things happening in 1883 to 1900, what people love, what are the things that people, what are the big deals, who are the thought leaders. So whenever you talk about generation, you put yourself in a box and see what were the things happening in that era. This is meant to be 15 minutes chat. Apologies if we came in late. We're streaming somewhere else. Okay. So now it's clear that 1883 to 1900, none of us, practically an average, none of us were born in that era. But they call that era the lost generation era. So you have the next generation, you call the greatest generation. They were born in 1901 to 1927. So this is like a different generation. So look at all the innovations, all the inventions that were created prior to 19 between 1901 to 1927. This shaped the mindset of the people of that era. They were the greatest generation. And we have the next generation we call the silent generation. The silent generation were born 1928 to 1945. Now, the good thing about the silent generation, we're coming home now. We have few people that are practically alive that were born in 1945. In the workplace, most of them, you don't see most of them at work. But in that era, what shaped the mindset were the wars. For every generation, they are shaped by everything that happens around them. So we have the generation that we are quite aware of. We have parents that are called the boomers, 1946 to 1964. The good thing about the boomers is that this is 2024. So an average workplace that is that old has a boomer. And a boomer comes from an era where there was more of technological boom. There was in their era, they called it boom because it was boom coming from world wars, coming from everything the world has been in. It was there was so much of it, they called it boom because of the technology advancements of that era. Now, the good thing about the boom era, baby boomers, is that in the workplace, technically, some of them are the oldest. They've seen better organizations. They've seen organizations come. They've seen big organizations, and they are and if you're fair to them, they are seeing small organizations that were born yesterday have the same amount of have what the same like an organization born in the hundreds and like 100 years ago. So they are the oldest. They understand the structure. If you have them in the workplace, they're the ones that will tell you they are more comfortable with the things they can control, which is very, very clear. Because for most of them bank with the oldest banks because they trust them. They it might look like they have trust issues, but they have seen what has worked. And let's be real, we would all go back to what has worked. They are more like they have they understand what value is. They are the best kind of people you should have on your board. I keep saying the mistakes we make is that when we retire baby boomers and we do send forth for them, we make the mistake of not calling them forth for and bringing them for our team meetings. For every meeting I have and I try to have a baby boomer, I try to advise you bringing baby boomers to have fireside chats. And this is the reason why you can't you can't you can't you can't just describe someone that understands work culture, that has seen things work for so long because they are old. It's the brain you need most of the times. The ability to always bring boomers for your team trainings and workshops. It's a value, their ability to bring them around and ask them questions about their area and the things that made work interesting for them, and also pay them for this service. It's the edge you would have. I understand the world is moving ahead, but the boomers are like, they're like your archives and coach. They're like the oldest that understand things. So always it's like listening to it. It's like listening to a father talk to you about life in their era. It's always a good plus for you to have a boomer on your board, in your team training meetings, just to listen to them. However, technically they are the oldest in the workplace. Okay. Then we have the next generation. We have the Generation X. We call the Gen X sometimes. We call them the middle child, and this is the reason why. The reason why we call them middle child is that they were born in an era where most of their parents, most of them had seen the boom era. Most of them have told themselves, we don't want to be like our parents, in quote. We don't want to, we want a better life. We want, someone said they called them X because they didn't know where to put them. They were like an X generation. We don't know the name to call them yet. But clearly, they were born in an era where they also looked at the generation before them and wanted to do better. Now, so after the Gen X, we now have the Gen Y, which are the millennials. I say this with all sense of whichever way you said that what happened with between Y and X was this. When Y came in and we had boom, we had technology booms, we had community booms, we had social media becoming a tool. Most of those that were born in the Y era went to school to study different courses. But along the line, something happened. Most of them were in school when the internet happened, when they figured out I said most of our parents sent us to school to go study a new skill. Some of our parents said, go so that you don't get poor like we were. So most of them said, education is going to change your life, go to school. And these kids went to school and they suddenly experienced the internet, and it got clear that you could earn two, three times maybe what your parents earn simply by understanding how to use tools, social media tools. That was like, it didn't make sense. How do we marry we preparing school preparing us to come and earn a living, and we've seen that we can earn a living just because we know how to use Facebook, Twitter, and almost all the digital tools that were born in the era. At that point in time, the focus changed for most people. Then we now had people with multiple with two careers. You had a lawyer that understood how to use social media, and he had a PR platform that was getting. He could talk to people that he had not met. We saw people making so much of magic with the internet, with Facebook, with Twitter, with all the tools, and they were earning. I keep saying it, they were earning money. The fact that they were earning money, they became a voice in their household. And that point in time, they became a voice in the workplace. Would you understand how a job description that was meant to be for a year, most of them were acing it in months, in 2 weeks, and they were like, "What else?" So the internet gave them so much of power. It changed the conversation. The millennial era, Gen Y era, changed conversation about the kind of why people should be coming to work. I remember having a show at that point in time where HRs were arguing. Um, People should not come to work. People should work from home. And the conversation was, why should they work from home? We want to see them until COVID happened. But the good thing was that the internet made it clear that your 3 years job description could be done in 6 days, and everybody's done. So there was a new kind of entrepreneurship that got clearer, and the chase for a better life because of the internet. I said the two presidents we had in the millennial era were Jock Dorsey of Twitter, now X, and Zooks. They had they conquered. They had numbers that were from different parts of the world. So if if the population of those on Facebook is like a population of a particular country, then that's the voice. So we had new kind of voices in the workplace. What this meant was that mindset changed, definition of work changed, definition of everything in the workplace changed. New portfolios were created because of the millennial era, because we're not just employing people with traditional roles, we're also employing people that understood the voices of this era. So we use LinkedIn, we use Facebook, we use X, we use every social tools thanks to the Gen Y era. Okay, I have less than 5 minutes to do this. Then we have the next generation, Gen Z. Now, here comes Gen Z in the workplace, the newest in the workplace. Between 1997 and 2020, 2012. Now, look at that age bracket, 1997, 2012. Now, for most of them, if we see, remember I said most of Gen Ys were in school when this boom happened. We had a Gen Z that started using the internet, they started using laptop. I keep seeing some Gen Zs, for most millennials, some millennials started using laptop in their final year in their university. But Gen Z started using laptop from the world ago. They were exposed to digital tools. So they had sat back to look out what they felt the earlier generation were not doing right, and they understood how to do it better. The goal of every generation, if you follow me, is this: that each generation is better than the next. You see, but at the point when the generation is in the forefront, they are like they're the best thing that happened for the interesting US Gen Zs, because they understood the power and they understand the power they have. They understood that they could do more with the internet. They understood that they have a voice. They also crave respect. And that's what happens wherever you have a new invention. Whoever creates something new should be respected. Whoever is born in an era that gets you results. And the workplace asks for one thing: results. So if I give you results, you should also give me respect. So we had the Gen Zs that didn't know how to have small talks. What they know, some of them were employed during the COVID era. I keep saying if you employ someone during the COVID era, it was simply because the world forced us to go remote, and we had to now look for those that could use the internet, they could use technological tools in any part of the world. Now, it's an edge that requires that their results is clearly determined by what they bring to the table. So most of them requested for desire for more respect. Now, prior to them coming, which became which is normal to give them, but the challenge is this: most of the laws that were created before them. So when I do during our trainings and workshop, what I keep saying is this: the best way to inculcate the Gen Z is not to create rules for them in isolation, but to co-create with them. Why? Because we have a new generation that are also giving you results. It's time to rewrite the rules of engagement, irrespective of the fact that we know that those rules were passed down. They are the newest. This era requires that we co-create the rules with them and we create consequences with them. That way, they are involved and they are accountable. The challenge with the newest generation, Gen Zs, is that for most of them, because they understand the power they hold with the media, because they are savvy technology. Most of them lack interpersonal relationships, and they lack interpersonal skills. They lack it not because it's to them it's not a need. That you want the work done, we do it for you. However, we've come to see that there is more to work than um, knowing how to use digital tools. There is more to your ability to hold a room. I keep saying the ability to hold a full room, to have conversations, is a big deal in this era that everybody knows how to use the internet, and most of us can have. You can't put two different people in a room to talk, and they talk for 20 minutes without picking up their phones. So it's we understanding that it's not their fault that they were born in an era that is digital, and we creating programs, workshops that would help them improve in their interpersonal skills. Understanding that if my boss wrongs me, that I could have a conversation with my boss rather than going to X and telling the world how how in quotes I have an interesting kind of boss that doesn't know how to do things. Is we understanding that you see we've always had people in the workplace prior to now, and they've been able to do things right. They've been able to we're used to people either not talking, but these ones know how to talk with the internet. So we're saying create workshops that would help them grow in their interpersonal skills, co-create rules that also make you accountable and make them accountable, and understand that things have also changed. That we're in an era that everybody is asking for accountability. and that if you would have the smart people in your workplace, you must be ready to co-create and hold your own side of the bargain. And they are the best kind of people in the workplace to work with. Difficult as it sounds, they're the newest, and you'll always give the newest your prop. Okay, there's a new generation. Really, I think they're like they call them Gen Alphas. I keep saying that Gen Alphas are like the next ones. They were born between 2013 and now. Between 2013 and 2024, 2025 is like 11 years. The good thing about the Gen Alphas is that they'll be in the next Olympics. So when you watch the next Olympics, be sure to see Gen Alpha winning gold medals. So what it means is that you should start looking at your 10-year-old and 11-year-old as and don't forget the conversation is this. The conversation is that the moment they are involved in money conversations, in the money, when I mean money conversations, decision making, the moment these people start earning a living thanks to social media, thanks to social tools, they now become a conversation on the table of every organization. So when planning, you plan for all the generations. You plan for those that are bringing money. This generation are going to bring in money to the table of the household. So our ability to understand these generations and see how to make them better and collaborate and bring each skills to the table is what makes you. Let's forget the inclusion conversation. You're not including them because you have to. You're including them because their skill set is very valid in this era. So you see, okay, we're out of time. We'll do this sometime again. I think I'll continue this conversation, but I hope two things I'm taking away from this is that the moment you see how each generation were born and how we've come to this place, you would have an open mind when you see and understand why each generation act the way they are. Each on its own is like rock star, but the ability to bring a rock star, a rock band to play an amazing rock song is what makes the team work. Okay, I'll do this every weekend, and from time to time, we would have top leaders bring in and talk about human and soft skills in the workplace. So, for today is have an amazing weekend and cheers.